In RPGs, when we talk about factions, there's a few different things that get lumped underneath that same umbrella term. Sometimes we're talking about something that players are expected to join, pick a side, where they're going to get some sort of reputation, quest rewards. They can expect help from these things. This is like a video game thing where you join the Stormcloaks, the Companions, the Dark Brotherhood, maybe all of the above. Forgotten Realms has the Emerald Enclave, the Harpers, and the Zentarum. You're probably only joining one of those. Then there are things where Dungeon Masters are talking about something that is there to create political intrigue. The central and allied powers, the houses of York or Lancaster, many of the noble houses in the Warring States period of Japan. The players are certainly going to interact with these factions, and they're probably going to get some help from some of them. They may get some rewards, but unlike the previous set of factions, these things don't just wait around for the players to come looking for some sort of help and ask them what's going on. These things are actually what's driving the engine of these political stories forward. They're there to create drama. I suppose we got to name these things so that we can differentiate them. I'm going to call the first set organizations and the second set alliances. Got better names for them, then by all means drop them down in the comments. That's the best that I could come up with. My name is James, and on this channel, I talk about the things that I think about, plan, and plot for my tabletop role-playing games. And today, that's factions. If I'm putting something underneath the heading of an organization, that means that I am thinking about them as having a specific end in mind or championing a specific ideal and not having enough power to make that end happen or to fully champion that ideal. They might still be useful to the players, but they don't have enough power in and of themselves to make major change happen in the campaign world. That's why they're looking to partner up with the players. And because I'm asking the players to pick a side and join them, I want to make sure that the players absolutely know what they're signing up for and there's no tricks here. Think of it like a cleric picking a deity at the beginning of the campaign. You could have some sort of major political intrigue going on in whatever religion church is going on, but the cleric to deity relationship should be pretty tight. You could have a situation where that gets flipped on its head, but I think that's the kind of thing that you want the player to have some sort of buy-in at the beginning of the campaign and go, I'm up for that story. I'm going into this knowing that that's what's going on. Because the cleric and the warlock are two different kinds of classes. One is expecting a betrayal. The other one is kind of expecting their god to be on their side the whole time. And I think the same thing should be true if the player is joining the organization, unless they know that that is what's going to happen. Although it could certainly be possible that the player would betray the organization. I think it's also possible for the player to have some friction with specific characters in the organization, some sort of rivalry. I think it's possible for the goals of the organization and the goals of the player to be different. They just shouldn't be in opposition. In the Witcher books, games, and series, Geralt belongs to the group of the Witchers, specifically the School of the Wolf. And while he doesn't get along with all of his fellow members of the Schools of the Wolf, Geralt can count on them for help within the context of being Witchers. He's not going to get help for them with any of the political intrigue that Geralt constantly finds himself embroiled in. Several of my players joined the House of the Unseen, an Assassin's Guild within my campaign world. They should be able to count on that Assassin's Guild for help within the context of being assassins. Don't ask them to come along and slay a dragon. That's not what they're there for. But if, while you're off slaying the dragon, you need to have a fellow noble killed off, they might be game. They are assassins. But they're not going to move on their own. Organizations don't move on their own. Alliances do. Any faction that has enough power to shape how our campaign is going to play out, I would put underneath the category of an alliance. These are your churches, your kingdoms, your armies, your nobles, your mage cabals, rebels. They are often tied to the main campaign themes. They may have been spawned because of the inciting incident. They all have stated goals, conquest, independence, security, something like that. But they're fighting over spheres of influence. They're going to want to say equal to the players in how the campaign plays out. They're definitely going to want to say in what happens afterwards. If the players choose to ally with any of these alliances, then it should be an understanding going into it that it is an alliance of convenience.
He's the only one in the fleet with enough shady friends around who can possibly hide us.
Love the way he puts that.
Well, Mr. Zarek, it would seem the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Call me Tom.
Using alliances, it should be the understanding of the players that the goals of the player and the goals of the alliance may not always be aligned. They may end up on opposing sides at some point in the future. Either party, the players or the alliance, may betray the other if it serves their goals' purposes. Alliances are inherently self-interested, though not always malevolent. Geralt in the Witcher series has complex relationships with many of the alliances in the world of The Witcher, the different noble houses, the mage guilds, and groups like the Scoia'tael. Even with characters like Yennefer and Triss that Geralt has a close relationship with, it's difficult for Geralt to fully trust them because they are members of an alliance, the mage guilds, and he knows that their help is conditional upon him not doing anything that's going to completely piss them off as mages. As dungeon masters playing tabletop role-playing games, alliances are really rewarding because they allow for a lot of interesting NPCs for our players to have conversations with and add different perspectives to different problems. But that's also what makes them very difficult. You have to have a lot of different ideas in your head about how different people would think about a situation and then come up with different people even within the alliance for them to have that complex political relationship. And ideally, every one of these alliances has at least a surface reason that the players, when they find it out, will go, you know, they kind of have a point. War is the most prevalent campaign setting because it immediately creates a bunch of factions that are committed to a life and death struggle. You, of course, have the two warring sides, but in the undercurrents there, you have a bunch of other factions. Those that might sue for peace if given the chance, those that want to gobble up resources, and those that just want vengeance and total victory. And then you have the things that are outside of it, the other neighboring kingdoms and the other neighboring cities. Are they going to pick a side? Are they going to try to play both sides against one another? Or are they just going to wait it out and hope for a power vacuum? And even before the war ends, there are people that plan for the next power structure and move to put themselves in better positions so that they can win the peace. No member of an alliance is going to want to be the one that leads the charge because everybody else behind them is going to be watching their back, wondering what happens if they fall. And maybe they would be better off if you did. That's such a shame that you fell during that charge. I'll be sure to honor you, but my sphere of influence has now grown now that I have to share this power with one fewer person. Outside the halls of power, normal people will start to gather together into their own groups. Merchant guilds will smell an opportunity for profit, while normal people will organize for protection, security, or maybe a chance for independence. Dunhain is the largest city in the northern province of a human-led empire that has been locked in civil war for 20 years. The original nobles that started the civil war are long dead, and the dwarves are starting to wonder, where do we stand? There are some basic options in this situation. You could stay neutral, try to wait it out. You could join in on your own side, make a go for the throne. Or you could join in on somebody else's side. There's plenty of nobles to choose from. But if I have to choose other sides with other nobles, that means that I have to make other factions outside of Dunhain. No thanks, I don't have time for that yet. I could just drop that option, but then I would only have two sides, and players would start to measure it and go, one is clearly the good option and one is clearly the bad option, and I don't want that. So I need a third option. I started thinking about, who are my dwarves? Unless your dwarves are some sort of a hive mind species like the Borg, then they are all individuals, but they share a culture and a history. The dwarves in my world were enslaved for 200 years. And while the humans did eventually help release them, that was after 200 years of enslavement. And it was 900 years ago. To the humans, that is ancient history. But to the dwarves, stone bears the mark of chisel and hammer forever. They're not easily going to forget that the humans left them enslaved for 200 years. That means I now have to think about why the dwarves would have ever joined this kingdom in the first place, and I decided it must have been for protection. And in typical dwarven fashion, they held true to their oaths for 900 years. But those leaders are all now dead and gone. And who knows who's going to be on the throne at the end of this civil war? They may have no relation to the people that we swore our oaths to. So do we really still owe them anything? Another typical motivation for people during this kind of a conflict is independence. Do we want to stay with these people anymore at all? Or do we want our own sovereign dwarven nation? We're back to three options. We could go try to join the fight, slaughter our brethren, and conquer the empire for ourselves. Or we could abandon our oaths and our friends and turn our backs on the empire. We're now an independent nation. Or we could stay neutral and say, look, we know you've got a thing, but we're going to stay out of it between friends. You go and settle your thing and let us know who's in charge at the end of it. In the absence of clear good-bad, neutrality often starts to look like the good option, and often is. However, in this case, that's not what I want for a role-playing game. I want the players to question these things, so I need to muddy those waters a little bit. I want my players to look at these dwarves and see the dwarves that they're expecting to see, so I need some sort of a dwarven trait that I can attach to neutrality. Well, dwarves like gold. To be clear, that is some version of trope. I know that. But your players probably signed up to play some sort of fantasy RPG, expecting and hoping to have a conversation with somebody like Gimli. So let's let them do that. So the faction that wants to stay neutral wants to do so because it is profitable. The players may really hate these guys when they find out that they are arms dealers selling to all sides. But they are adventurers, and they do need better gear and better weapons, and they can provide it. It's not like the dwarves are forcing the humans to kill one another. The humans did that to themselves. So can you really blame the dwarves for trying to turn a profit? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. That's part of the decision that I want the players to make. The point isn't to sway the players from joining Alliance, but to make it clear that there are no good guys here. If you join Alliance, you are making a deal with one devil or another. If you make it clear that there is a good guy Alliance, then the players will join that, even if they are of, let's say, questionable morality, because it's what they feel like they're supposed to do. It's okay if you have an explicitly evil faction, assuming that the players are all right with possibly joining that, as long as you have not set up Team Evil and Team Other Guy. You're going to have to set up a bunch of other options, otherwise the players will feel like you're setting up you're supposed to join this faction. Alliances are filled with people that have varying degrees of commitment to these causes and other causes that they may believe in, and those things are going to come into conflict. That's what makes them different than an organization. In an organization like a Thieves Guild, they are all dedicated to a cause, crime and getting money and doing whatever that Thieves Guild is doing, and they're willing to put aside their individual interests in this common good. I mean, it's a Thieves Guild, so probably not good, but you get the point. But alliances are not like that. Alliances are filled with individuals that have differing levels of commitment to this idea, and they have other things that they might be more committed to. That's what makes them interesting and different. So we need to fill our alliance with a bunch of people. We don't need like a dossier of like 30 people. That would be ridiculous. Don't do that to yourself. You just need a few people, and then you can riff on those themes. Start with the leadership. Who runs this alliance? It is common to make the leader a paragon of whatever the alliance is committed to. And that is a way to go. Maybe that's what you want to do with one of your alliances. But it is not the only way to go. Sometimes you have an alliance with a bunch of people that are dedicated to an idea. They're zealots that absolutely believe in this cause, in addition to all the other causes that they may believe and care about, all their other entanglements and ties. But the leader does not believe in it, at least not in the same way. They may lean that direction, but really they've identified these people as a group that they can take advantage of. They are a parasite that has come in, they've taken it over, and now they sit at the top, and it's really about their own power, selfishness, their own glory. They're a charlatan that is taking these people for a ride. And that can make an interesting story if the players are able to come in and remove that mask and show these people who they really are. The opposite side of this, of course, is where the leader is the most committed of the members of the faction. Yeah, these people all believe in the same thing, but most of them would not take extreme action. The leader would. Yes, it's violent, it's extreme, but it's all in the name of the cause. If I can get them to just take one step after another, by the end, they'll be in so deep they can't possibly turn back. Octavian Heidi is the leader of the pro-independence faction in the city of Dunhain. She is a militant-minded dwarven thane and will mobilize the entire city if it means it will create a sovereign dwarven nation, and she will put down any dissent. She believes violence is the end answer, so why beat around the bush? Quick, decisive, bloody action will prove her resolve. I like to keep the leader of my faction off stage as much as possible, like horror movies with the monster being kept away, so that the player's imagination, or viewer in the case of the horror movie, starts churning and they come up with their own ideas. Sometimes those ideas are better than what I came up with, and I can just grab those and use those instead, and the players never know that I had something else intended. If I need to, I can have that leader come out and say something, often to a lieutenant or something impressive, something threatening, and then march off stage so the players get a little annoyed. Who are they to think they're this important not to talk to us? We're the adventurers. We're the heroes of the story. They should want to talk to us. The NPC doesn't know that. You're just a bunch of people off the street. The NPC is going to treat them like that until the adventurers prove themselves. Like any general, our leader needs someone at their right hand, an aide de camp, someone that's going to take care of the daily business of running this alliance, but also somebody that would get their own hands dirty to keep this person's clean. I usually like to take the aide, and while they are dedicated to the cause, certainly, they're even more dedicated to this leader. This person is going to be the one that leads us all to glory. They're often the one that the players have to convince that they're worth the leader's time. They act as a sort of gatekeeper. There's usually some sort of quest or something they have to do to prove themselves as a person, that they're not just some hitman ordered by another alliance to get rid of the leader. So there's some effort there. Caspian Bors is Octavia and Kaidi's aide-de-camp. He's a dwarf whose family was ruined by his mother's financial mismanagement. He joined the city guard, but he wanted a cause, and Octavia gave him that cause: dwarven independence. He is now completely and totally devoted to her, and she knows it. He is the person that she is going to send out when she needs to put down dissent. Everyone in the alliance, aside from the leader, I like to give some sort of a flaw to show why they're not the perfect member of this alliance. If it comes to blows between players in the alliance, then the leader is the end boss. I don't want them taken around in some back alley for just quest bait, but everybody else is fair game, including the aide-de-camp. In the case of Caspian Bors, his flaw is his mother. She's still around, she's gambling and throwing money away hand over fist. And if it came down to it, he is going to act rashly to try to protect his mother. She is his secret shame and the only thing that he might be more dedicated to than Octavia. Lieutenants are the next run down and the last ones that I name and maybe even create character sheets for. Everybody else is just going to be generic thugs or scouts or whatever NPC stat block I want to throw in there. The lieutenants, I also give a lot of different connections to different alliances to show that, like, tugging lines of different loyalties to create a web of intrigue. They're usually less informed than the two leaders, and they are often competing with one another for station within the alliance. For noble families, I like to use their children. Octavia and Kaidi's children are Myron, Simon, and Catherine. Because I don't have enough time for a 30-minute video, we're just going to focus on Myron. Myron is jealous of Caspian's position within the organization, and he is eager to prove himself to his mother. Unlike her, he believes that a dagger in the dark is even better than open warfare, and to that end, he has cultivated a relationship with another organization, the Ebon Dogs, a thieves guild in the lower city. Before the players start their adventure in the city, he hired the Ebon Dogs to go assassinate Eliza Labrada, the leader of another alliance. But the assassination failed, and the assassin was caught, alive, and then executed, dropped into the catacombs beneath Dunhane. But there are open questions. I hit on a noble family. Only another noble family would do it. That's why they executed the assassin so quickly. They didn't know which of them had actually done this. And now Myron is panicking. Did the assassin name names? Somebody should go down and get the corpse and demand answers of it. But that's not going to be Myron. Maybe I could trick a group of adventurers into going and doing that for me. They would get a powerful ally. I could introduce them to the Ebon Dogs, or maybe I could trick Caspian into introducing them to my mother. That one thread creates a few others that we can use to start weaving together a net of intrigue. The Ebon Dogs. The leader knows it was his group that was hired and by whom. Maybe he goes to Caspian and tries to blackmail him. You're going to introduce me to Octavia. We have business to discuss. Otherwise, I'll take what I know and give it to Eliza Labrada. But Caspian knows that Octavia is never going to give in to lower city thieves. She would see it as weak. So he hires the adventurers to go and recover the corpse so he can figure out which one of her stupid children did this, and then he's going to take care of it for her. Eliza Labrada would probably like the name of the thief as well. She doesn't know who tried to kill her because Conk and Unkaidi both teamed up together because they didn't know which one of them had tried to have her assassinated. It was just better to get rid of the thief and have their hands washed clean of it. If the adventurers go and recover the corpse and bring it to her, she's probably pretty thankful. To create this web of intrigue, we take the different alliances and tie them together and with the different organizations. I like to take 3 alliances, take 2 of them, and tie them to the same organization. In this case, it's the Labradas and the Unkaidis that are tied to the Ebon Dogs. But I took the Conks and the Labradas and tied them to the Church of Kataris. This is all to create a web for when the players finally enter the stage. They're going to start shaking the web, and then our job as a dungeon master is to take the alliances and go, what is their next move? What would they naturally do, and how could they manipulate the organizations and the players into trying to do it? It doesn't mean that it's going to work. The players may not choose any of them. That's fine too. They may tell all the nobles to just go pound sand, assassinate all the leaders, and take over the city for themselves. Basically what my players did. And that's fine. It's still interesting when they do that because they have made a choice. I think the main difference for me in role-playing an organization versus an alliance is one of loyalty to the players. An organization is going to go along with the players within context of that organization. Which organization is going to which. Don't ask them to go up against the Mage Guild. That's not what they're there for, Geralt. But in an alliance, the understanding from the player should be that if it is to the alliance advantage, they are going to sell you down the river. It's no hard feelings. It's just business. The players should expect that kind of behavior from these members. But they should also be able to play with the loyalties within the alliance to try to get people to break off and join them or whatever it is. If you're trying to create these, I know people like checklists, and I got one for you. Just don't make it a straitjacket. Stories are an art, not a science. And in art, we learn the rules because sometimes breaking them makes the art better. Number 1, who would be a part of this organization? Is this a nation, an army, a cult, a religion, a group of nobles? Because that's going to help you decide what these people value and what their cause is. Number 2, what do they want? Do they want profit, religious conversion, survival, conquest, revenge, some sort of a magical power, or just political power? Number 3, why can't they have what they want? Is there some object that's standing in their way, whether it's a person, a thing, going to a place, some sort of dungeon is not available to them? Is there some sort of moral imperative, this group that says, well, we want this, but we can't have that. We'd have to do bad things to get that. In which case, are they willing to contract with a group of adventurers that are willing to commit the sin that they're not willing to? Or would they only have members as part of their group that believe the same things that they believe? The next few are primarily for alliances. Number 4, what could you say to the players for this alliance that would make them say, well, they kind of have a point. I get where they're coming from. Yeah, I kind of agree with these guys. Number 5, who are the leaders of this alliance and what kind of weaknesses do they have that I can use to tie to different organizations and to different alliances? Number 6, this group wants to achieve something. What does it look like if they actually accomplish their goal? You're not figuring out every step along the way. You're just figuring out what does it look like after they've gotten there. Kant just wants to sell weapons to every side. What does it look like if he manages to do that? The war probably continues. Labrada wants to put herself on the throne. What does that look like if she does it? The dwarves are probably more powerful than they've ever been before. They're going to profit immensely. What does it look like if Unkaiti manages to form her own dwarven nation centered around Dunhain? You'll notice many of these questions are the same that we might be asking of characters because factions, organizations, and alliances are characters. They are the average of their constituent members all boiled down into one. It's also many of the same questions that we should be asking of our villains, because especially in the case of alliances, they might end up being villains, and we want to know what that looks like when we start going into it. If you want more things about making these different alliances, different factions, there's a video over here about making different thieves guilds. I used the same process that I outlined there when I was making the Ebon Dogs in the Hall of Iron. And over here, there's a video about organizations that masquerade as good, but very much aren't. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember you're a player too. Try to have some fun.